Well, hello there, and welcome back to the very latest episode of my Love Machine podcast. Now, today we're exploring the powerful and transformative concept of self-worth and how it can help us live our very best lives. Self-worth is the foundation of our sense of identity, confidence, and self-esteem, yet it is often something that we take for granted or struggle to cultivate. In this episode, we'll delve into the secrets and psychology of self-worth and the role it plays in our personal and professional relationships. We'll also explore practical tips and strategies for building our self-worth and living our very best lives. So whether you're looking to boost your confidence, improve your relationships, or just feel more empowered in your daily life, this episode is for you. Get ready to be inspired and motivated to step into your power and unleash your true potential. And to help us understand the importance of self-worth and how to cultivate it in our lives, we're joined by a very special guest who is a self-worth coach, personal development mentor, marketing director and consultant, daydreamer, and apparently a cat lover too, Louise Blackman. She helps people to step into their light and into their power so they can start getting what they want from life and start living instead of just existing. And her mission is to help people realize how amazing they are and to remind them that every single day that there's not one thing you don't deserve, and to help you realize you have limitless potential to bring your magic into the world. Louise, how was that intro for you?
Thank you. Daydream always makes me laugh because I forget that I put that places somewhere. But yeah, definitely am a daydreamer. But yeah, lovely intro. Thank you.
I'm a daydreamer too. I think you have to be in life, don't you?
You do. You do. That's where all the best ideas come from.
It is. It'd be very, very boring if we didn't daydream. And
exactly.
I find I daydream all the time. I don't really sleep very well, so I tend to have these thoughts going through my mind all the time. Do you have that? Do you sleep well?
I go through periods really, but I'm in a period of sleeping like a log at the moment, so I'm really enjoying that.
I'm very jealous of that. I wish I did. But okay, wonderful. I'm really pleased to have you on my podcast. Thank you for joining me so quickly as well to get this done.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. The first question I want to ask you is the obvious one, which is pretty much how did you get into this? And what made you want to pursue a career in self-development and self-worth?
Yeah, so I've kind of been doing self-development for a really long time. I think I read my first sort of like self-help book when I was about 16 years old, 15, 16. So yeah, kind of been diving in and out of the world of self-development for a really long time. Had a couple of rough patches where I kind of was suffering with anxiety, had to have like sort of counselling and things to help me along. And just sort of really threw myself into the world of self-development, really, to sort of help myself through tough periods and all of that kind of stuff. Wasn't really aware of like the world of coaching until sort of like 3 or 4 years ago. Joined a couple of courses over lockdown and sort of started to hear about the world of coaching, found some people on Instagram and stuff like that and felt really inspired by it all. And then eventually started working with my own coach, and yeah, I just fell in love with it. And I was like, this is what I want to do. I've always kind of wanted to do something to help people, and was kind of like considering going back to uni and sort of going in down that route. But yeah, stumbled across coaching and decided that yeah, that was kind of where I wanted to take things, and it went from there, really.
Amazing. Well, thank you for sharing your story. Do you remember what book it was that you first read all those years ago?
It was one by Louise Hay.
Okay. Yeah.
You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay.
Amazing. And what do you think about that? Any thoughts on that? Do you remember it still?
Yeah, I read it all the time. I think I must have read it about 10, 11 times. I feel like every time you go back to it, it's like you've unlocked a different level, so to speak. I find that with a lot of books, when you read it the first time, you can kind of, it resonates in a different way as to when you go back to it again. So yeah, I recommend it to everyone. It's a great book, and you can sort of pick it up at any stage in your life, really.
You can. I remember having my first self-help book when I was about 15 or 16 as well, which was Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. Have you heard of that one?
Yeah.
Amazing. But my dad got it for me. I've probably got it on my bookshelf up there now, probably. I've got all of his books. He hasn't written many books, surprisingly. Not conventional books in the mainstream Amazon type places.
Yeah.
But it's just an amazing book and made me start to be a coach and want to help change myself and change the world.
Yeah.
And it's an important thing to help people. And I think coaching is a very important step. Not everybody wants to be coached, though, at any one time.
No.
But I find people come to us as coaches when they're ready. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, 100%. And I think it's so important for people to come to you rather than you to go to them, because with this kind of work, you have to be ready to do it yourself. It's not something that you can, force on someone. If someone's not ready to receive sort of the information and the help, you can't make anyone do anything unless they're ready to sort of step into it.
You can't. Let's talk about the big topic, which is self-worth then.
Mm-hmm.
I talk about self-worth quite a lot on my podcast. It's a very common theme, but I'd like to hear your take on this, because have you struggled yourself in your life with self-worth? Because most of my coaches have at that stage. And have you got any particular stories about this that made you realize what it really means, the value of it?
Yeah. So I kind of struggled with self-worth for a really, really long time. And it was only sort of after I'd sort of finished my qualification for coaching that I realized like self-worth coaching was what I wanted to focus on. But yeah, it's such a broad subject, and I feel like, everyone struggles with it. We all have some things that we're not, completely happy with, but yeah, I struggled for a really long time when I was younger, and it's a journey that I've had to sort of like really chip away at to get to where I am now. And it affects every area of your life, really, sort of like relationships, your career, how happy you are on a day-to-day, your health. Everything is affected by sort of how much you think you're worth, and what you do to sort of show yourself love and all of that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's just a really broad subject that is close to my heart. So
there's so many important self-words. Self-important maybe isn't the best one of them, but self-confidence, self-worth, self-love, self-care, all these things about bringing understanding our own value. Yet often the biggest problem with this self-worth itself is that we put our value of ourselves in the hands of other people, don't we?
Yeah.
We look at it, we think, well, do you know what? That person didn't want to date me, therefore I must be really unattractive. Or that person wouldn't hire me, therefore I must be rubbish at my job. How do you first start rebuilding your self-worth?
So it's a difficult thing to talk about sometimes because it's such a broad subject. So I feel like you have to really narrow it down to where it's showing up for you and like what it means to you in a sense. Because like under the umbrella self-worth, I kind of work with people on sort of loads of different areas. So there's like self-belief, self-confidence, self-love, all of that kind of stuff. And I think it's really important to sort of narrow it down to an area that's affecting you the most, look into sort of why that's being affected, like where are you self-sabotaging, where are you blocking yourself, what are you scared of, what are your fears, and it's about sort of having the awareness and understanding of where that's come from and how to move past it with an understanding of sort of why it's showing up in the way that it is.
Yeah, that's important. You touched upon another very important self there, self-sabotage. And that's a common thing that I have with my clients as well. People often talk themselves out of things in life, and they don't really know what they want or what they do want, and they know deep down what they should be doing. In fact, this is an interesting question because I saw this on your Instagram, and I've made a note of this to ask you anyway. So I may as well ask you the question now. It ties in perfectly timing into this lovely podcast. Now, why do people avoid things that they know would benefit them?
So I think when you strip it back, at the heart of everything is this need. Well, it's like everything is kind of coming from a fear of something, and with that comes the like pull to protect ourselves. So when you avoid things that you know are good for you, it can be sort of, I mean, if we're talking about self-worth, it can be sort of like rooted in the fact that people don't think they're deserving of like things that are better. And when you're sort of struggling with your self-worth, you might do things over and over again that don't necessarily give you good results, but it's a habit and that's kind of what you're used to. You feel comfortable there. Because you feel comfortable, that gives the impression that it's sort of like safe, but it's not necessarily true. So yeah, I find when I'm working with people, when we break it all down, it comes down to fear and it comes down to the need to sort of like protect
ourselves.
Mm.
I think so. I think deep down we are all struggling with this issue to some degree, but some have it more than others. Where does this all come from? I suppose it comes from childhood, doesn't it, initially, all this, and how we were treated when we were younger. But doesn't everyone have strange experiences when they're younger? What affects some people more than others?
Um, so yeah, I guess it comes from like childhood, obviously that's like where everything starts. But I feel like when we go through life, it can literally be, you can be in different experiences. Like some people react differently to certain things. Some people are more emotional. Like everyone's just so different. It depends how you are as a person as to how certain things are going to make you feel. But it's like you could have one experience that doesn't feel massively relevant. You might not even remember it, but it might have at the time caused you sort of like embarrassment or hurt or anger or something like that, and it sort of sticks with you without sort of being like a really prominent event in your life. But I think it's like loads of different things happen over time, because if something happens when you're younger, you then sort of start to repeat patterns that reinforce, you know, how you've dealt with that situation and your habits and stuff related to that sort of event. So we then kind of go through life subconsciously doing sort of the same things and putting ourselves in the same situations, and it builds up over time to sort of like create a bit of a bigger issue than if it just happened once when you were a child and then never happened again, if that makes sense.
It does. I always get flashbacks of my own little thoughts in my life, and people tell me this and talk about this on my podcast. And I thought of one now, a perfect example of self-worth and how you can change things as an adult. When I was younger, a kid, maybe about ages 8 to 13, 14 years old, we had to do games, we called it at school, which is sports. As you call it, games? Maybe not. We called it games. And it wasn't really games. It was playing football. Or at the start of every games lesson, which I absolutely hated, it was running around this field, round and round around this field. Did you have to do that? Maybe you didn't.
Yeah, like PE, yeah.
PE, but yeah, PE. That's another thing. We had to do it in the afternoon, running around this field. And I hated it. I was unfit, hated doing it. Always used to walk it, one of the last people. I thought, I'm never going to be a run, never going to be fit, I'm never going to do this. So when I got older, I decided what I'm going to do is I started running. And I went back to that field, which is actually a private field now, and they gave me permission to go and do it. And I ran around that field 3 times just to prove to me that it wasn't some limiting belief that had happened, and I had to overcome that. And I did that for my clients, really. If I tell everyone to change your beliefs and you can change things, I've got to do it myself. You've got to feel the fear and do it anyway. All these sort of thoughts. I think it's important that you live through these things. That's just my own example. I like to throw in my own life into this because it shows that I'm real as well.
Yeah.
Anything that you've overcome in particular?
Oh,
put you on the spot there, of course.
Yeah, that's a big. I mean, it's hard to this is something that's obviously really important, and I know that I need to do this more, but it's kind of like reflecting on, you know, how far you've come and all of the stuff that you've achieved. But just to sort of give a little bit of a context, I lived in London for like 7-8 years. I moved back to my parents' house last year, so I've been here about a year now, and I was absolutely terrified to sort of like take a step away from London, because I, you know, was living in London and in my own space, and a lot of people were sort of like holding me to sort of like having this really great life, but I was really, really unhappy. I was struggling. It was too much. I wanted to just come away and sort of like take a step back from things. And yeah, it was just like a massive decision for me to sort of like take myself away from that, move away from all of my friends. And I remember at the time thinking, like, I can't do this. I quit my job. I, you know, like just left everything and kind of like started a new life out here. But like, that's something that comes to mind, because it's now, like looking back, I think, that decision wouldn't have been very hard to make. But at the time, the headspace I was in, it was like the most overwhelming decision ever. And I remember making it and thinking, oh my God, what have I done? I've made the wrong decision. And I wanted to go back on it. I remember at the time thinking, I'll cancel it. I'll stay here. Like, it's fine. And sort of like overcoming that and trusting myself and being like, you're making this decision because you need to, you know, make some changes and get your head sorted and get back on track and stuff. And yeah, that was kind of the first time that I've ever made such a massive decision like that. And haven't gone back on it and sort of trusted myself to go with the flow and know that that was the best thing for me.
I think your gut knows deep down what's right for you. But I had this conversation with a client yesterday about change. No one really wants change. We're all very, very comfortable doing the same thing. You mentioned that yourself earlier.
Yeah.
Everyone falls into these sort of patterns of things. We're just comfortable doing it. Maybe you want to keep going on the same, watching the same programs every time, eating the same meals. We're very much used to that. If change comes, it can be very, very frightening.
Yeah.
What is harder to do? Even leaving a bad partner, for example. It's easier to stay with someone that makes you unhappy, or a job that you hate, than to go and start again. I think reinvention and rebooting yourself is a very powerful, important thing. And you did that, which is amazing. And I was forced to do that during the pandemic to some degree myself. I got rid of my office in London, didn't know what's going to happen. I thought no one's ever going to want me coaching again. No one's going to want to date again. It was the opposite. You know, it was amazing. And you've created this job and you're doing all these things now. And it's amazing. We have to do this. You can't live in the fear that, okay, making a choice. You make a decision and stick to it.
Yeah.
And it does help to have a coach to do that. You said you had a coach yourself. Do you still work with a coach now?
Yeah. I think it's so important as a coach to work with a coach. Like, it's constant sort of journey. Everyone's like, no one ever reaches a level where it's like, okay, I'm the best that I can possibly be. Like, there's always more lessons, there's always more growth. And I think it's really important to sort of acknowledge that, because I think sometimes people can sort of look to coaches or people in that kind of position and be like, oh, well, they've got everything figured out and they're sort of, you know, the best version they can be. And it's just not the case. We all, you know, should work with other people to keep learning and growing and be open-minded and stuff like that. So I will always work with people to sort of grow and better myself. I
think it's important. I feel myself drawn to a certain coach at the moment who is a business coach. And I've known them for quite a long time and I really want to work with them, but I never really have. What it is, it's the fear of being vulnerable. And I don't want to have to admit all these things that I'm nervous about. Okay, I do really well and I'm very successful, but there are more things I need to do. For example, as I mentioned this before my podcast, I want to do YouTube videos and start doing advice on there. But it's so much work and effort and I haven't really got around to it yet. But I think they're going to push me to do that and I think I need to get on with it. So I think being not afraid to reinvent yourself and to do that are important here.
Yeah, definitely.
Who are your typical clients that come to you?
So it's a really, you know, it can vary, but anyone who's kind of like struggling with, it's usually confidence issues, and that's mainly sort of like with career, sort of like feeling stuck, wanting to like level up, being like on a good sort of level that they've worked hard to get to, but it's kind of like that next level up where they really want to sort of like step into, you know, a new role or the higher up level and that kind of stuff. But yeah, I work with, obviously self-worth is a really broad subject, but it calls in a lot of different people, but I kind of pitch it as anyone who's feeling sort of like stagnant, like there should be more, like they're kind of happy with where they are, but they know that there's that little itch inside them that's like, this isn't it, like there's something more there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And once you get that itch, it's very hard to turn a blind eye to it, isn't it?
Yeah. It's like once you, I always absolutely butcher quotes, so I'm not going to say this properly, but isn't it, there's a quote or a saying when it's like, once you become aware of something, you can't not be aware of it.
Something like that.
Yes. Sorry, I always butcher them. But,
near enough, yeah.
Yeah, it's like once you sort of start to like dive into that kind of world and it's, you see people and there's like, you know, people that you look up to who are doing things and you're like, well, they're doing it, why can't I do it? As soon as you start to ask those questions, you sort of like fall into that world of being like, this is something that's, I'm pushing it down because I'm happy being comfortable and I'm, you know, on paper I've got everything that I should need, but you know, once you light that fire, it's not going to go out, it's there and it's burning away. So yeah,
it is, it's pushing yourself out of your comfort zone. That's what
massively.
It is.
Yeah.
And it's important you do that and you'll test yourself. That's why I do things sometimes to test myself. I don't think I do enough. I think I need to do more. I know what I need to be doing and I need to get on with it. But I think you choose something and you commit to it.
Yeah.
I've done almost 160 episodes of this podcast now, which I'm proud of. And I keep doing it. It's an achievement. Well, thank you. It's an achievement to keep doing it and it's important. And that becomes a habit. I just wish that I'd done that with the gym, for example, and going to the gym as many times every week. I'd be so ripped right now. but then what's more important, I think I enjoy the podcast and talking to people, and
Yeah.
that's it. And I am starting going back to the gym and doing Pilates. I'm starting Pilates now.
Nice.
Things like that. Just sharing my own life story with you, really. That's one of my I think self-care practices and self-work practices are really, really important. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Do you have any yourself?
Yes. So loads and loads and loads of
Where do we
habits.
begin? I love this. Go for
it. So I used to really struggle with like routines and structure. I'm very much like, I want to spend my day however I feel like spending it.
Are you a bit of a rebel?
little bit.
Me too,
so
yeah.
I don't like being told
what to do. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had to do a lot of work around breaking down beliefs I had surrounding routine and habits. I had quite a negative outlook on habits and sort of really went against them. But once you learn the value in them and you start to see the results in the small things that you do every single day add up to the massive shifts, it's like it's just something that you don't then compromise on. And my sort of self-care routine looks very much the same thing every day, even though I don't like structure and routine. I now know that that's something that it's just one of those things where I'm like, I won't compromise on it anymore. Like, I make time for it. This is my time to do, whatever I need to do. And it can sort of change slightly, but more or less the same sort of thing. So it involves being outside in nature, whether that's a walk or, just getting outside for 10, 15 minutes if I'm busy, moving my body. So some kind of exercise, journaling every single day, morning and night.
Journaling. Yes. Right. We won't talk about that now, but it comes up a lot on my podcast. And I've tried it and I can't do it.
Oh, you're not trying hard enough.
For those listening, I'm not trying hard enough. Well, when you told me this, I'll ask you some tips on that in a second. But so what else do you do? Sorry to interrupt you.
That's okay. So I will always read as well, some kind of like personal development book. Eating healthy, so I kind of try to stick to a really simple sort of like diet that's got everything in it that I need, and I stick to it for like the same amount of time. So sort of like really structure what I'm doing in terms of like what I'm putting in my body. Some kind of meditation, whether that's a guided one or just sort of like taking time to do it on a walk where I'm not listening to anything, to create some space for any kind of thoughts that need to come through. And that's about it, roughly. I mean, like in the evenings, I think it's really important to like structure in time to do nothing. So like resting, because like when you're self-employed, like working into the evening, like you just end up working all the time. Like if there's stuff to be done, you just do it. And with phones in our hands 24/7, you can think that you're resting and you're not working, but really you're like scrolling through Instagram looking for content ideas or inspiration or something like that. So that's something else that I make sure I'm structuring, because it's so easy to just think, oh, I'll work up until 9 o'clock and then you've had no time to yourself. So
I try and do that myself. I know it's really, really hard. I think there is certainly a time for Netflix and chilling out on the sofa.
Yes.
That's what I try
and
do.
So important.
I try and do that every evening to some degree, whether it's for an hour or even 2 hours, depending what I've been doing, how long I've been working. It's important. But it's amazing how many things come up that many successful coaches do. Like meditation and walks in nature. And I try and do all these things myself. I listen to podcasts when I go for a nice walk or go for a run. And that's important. I think I learn from other people's podcasts how they're doing it. I do play them at twice the speed. Because I have got a very short attention span. I don't want to hear all the waffle. I want to get on with the facts and get on with it. I do that on YouTube as well. Watch videos and watch them twice the speed. Do you ever try doing that? No.
It's too much for me though. I can't, like, sometimes when when you get a voice note through on WhatsApp or something and I've accidentally pressed double the speed, I'm like, why is that person talking so quickly? But then I realise and I'm like,
I talk quickly anyway, but I do it on YouTube. I do it because I absorb more information that way. If I know I've really got to pay attention to listen and take in every single word, I find it really helps me to do that. And that's a very, very useful tool. And another very useful tool is, of course, journaling. So I want to ask you about that again, because everyone talks about this. I've got journals. I would show you my journal, but this is how bad it is. It's not even here anymore. It's now It's not. I used to have it. I tidied my office the other day and I've moved my journal away. My one page of my journal that I filled in. But I will ask you, what are the benefits of journaling, first of all? And I found my journal here. I'm going to show you my blank journal.
Yeah.
No one can see this, but one day when I start doing YouTube versions of this, they will see it. There's my blank journal. There we are. There we are.
Fresh pages.
I filled in more than I thought I had. A few little things. That's it. A nice blank page. I can go on. I can do tricks now on Britain's Got Talent there, but I won't explain how. I'm going to flick through which of these things is it going to be. I'm going to flick the other way, and these are the ones that I'm forcing you. But that's something different that only magicians will understand. Right. So, okay, what are the benefits of this, and how can I do it the right way?
So, journaling is, I think, for people who've never journaled before, it can feel really, really uncomfortable. And it is just a case of sort of like committing yourself to it, and like, even though it feels uncomfortable, if you sit there and you can only write 2 sentences down, like that's still journaling. You're starting. It's like the intention of committing to doing it. In terms of benefits, it's a way to get everything out of your head. I mean, I'm going to talk from my personal experience. I'm sure other people have different experiences, but for me, the benefits are it gets everything out of my head. Sometimes I'm not even aware of what's in my head that comes out. If you just sit down to write with no sort of like objective, or set yourself a goal of like a question or whatever's in your head will come out and down, and that can be so valuable, because if it's something that you've not been aware of that just sort of like comes to mind, that can lead to sort of like unpicking something that's blocking you, or if you're feeling anxious about something, you might not necessarily know that the root of it is, I don't know, whatever's come out. And it just helps you to get everything that's sort of swimming around in your head down and onto a piece of paper, which is then really helpful for reflections. So you could go back to that in 2 weeks' time, or a month's time, or even a year's time, and sort of like reflect on things and be like, wow, okay, like I've really grown from this. This is what I've done. This is what was holding me back there. I can remember X, Y, and Z and why I felt like that, and I've worked through it. So it's just a really powerful tool for sort of like getting everything out of your head and onto paper. And in terms of, what was your question? Sorry, how to do it properly? Or was it...
you said I wasn't doing it properly.
So
you don't entirely know that because you've not seen me do it.
Exactly.
But I'm throwing it back at you anyway.
Yeah. So I guess it's just it's like there's no right way of doing it in a sense, because it's such a personal practice.
Yeah.
Some people might find it, like voice. If you don't like writing, if you struggle to sit down and write, go on a walk and talk it out loud. That can be classed as journaling. Find a way that works for you. Like, you don't have to do it with pen and paper. If you're better at typing and you prefer to type, then you can do it like that. It's a way of expressing what you normally wouldn't express, in a way. If you think of it's like completely personal, no one's going to see it, what you would write in a journal is completely different, or can be completely different to what you would voice to, close friends and family, or to other people. So it's like a outlet for things that you might not want to sort of discuss.
Reveal.
Yeah, exactly. It's like your own personal little place to sort of let everything down and not hold on to stuff. It's a release, and it just sort of clears your head and helps you move forwards with things.
You've given me a great idea. Believe it or not, you have done. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to try this one out myself.
Yeah.
What I'm going to do, next time my house is empty and quiet, which won't be any time today, because I'm going to need to go for my walk in nature after this, because I've been here. That's my plan. I stick to what I say. I'm going to record maybe a 5 or 10 minute podcast on my own.
Yeah.
And I'm going to talk into the microphone. All my thoughts are coming out, and see what comes out of my mouth, as if I was on a radio show being interviewed myself.
Yeah.
Because I find if someone asks me a question, I can just talk and talk and talk.
Yeah.
I'll be honest, I interview myself on this. And then I'll transcribe it using my transcription software I've got.
Yeah.
And I will save a copy of it. That's what I'm going to do. That'd be useful.
Yeah, definitely. Give it a go and let me know how you get on. But
I will.
Yeah.
But you know what I did recently? I sat in a coffee shop with my notepad. I like to make notes and set goals for myself, and I do that all the time. And I pulled my notepad out. I thought, well, I'm going to look back on this from a couple of years ago, my original notes. And I went through them all. I thought, hang on a minute. You've got all these goals on here. You've done hardly any of these things. That's pathetic. You're going to write them all down again. And I realised I only made the list 6 weeks ago. It was around sort of February, March time, and I thought, okay, I did the same thing then, and some things were in motion, but I thought I was very disappointed with myself to start with. I had all these goals from years ago I hadn't achieved, but they were quite recent, and it was good to reflect on them. And some of them I have been working on, so it wasn't. I was beating myself up a little bit for no reason. Useful. Any last minute tips you'd like to give anyone who is struggling with their self-worth?
I think it's just sort of like really getting to know why, like, where things are showing up for you, like taking responsibility and sort of like having a really deep look at where things are showing up, and if there's any kind of like patterns and things like that is a really great place to start. I've kind of found sort of like through working with people and obviously on my own journey, when there's an issue with my self-worth, when I'm like lacking in self-belief or confidence for something, it starts to show up in loads of different areas, and like it will keep getting shown to you in different ways, and it will crop up in different, like, loads of different ways. So if there's anything that kind of like keeps happening over and over again, if you're repeating a pattern, just be really aware of it and take some time to sort of like dig into it, and that can be like a really powerful starting point, because once you sort of become aware of like why things are happening the way that they are, you can start to unpick things and unravel everything. So
great advice there. Thank you so much. I mean, that's very, very true. I think we've all got little things and stumbling blocks, and if things get repeated, it's you telling yourself that for a reason. It needs to be worked on and improved on. But overall, I think we're all capable, as you said yourself I said in your intro, we are capable of doing anything we want to do and achieving goals. You've got one life, you want to do it. If you want to unleash your inner magic, it's just down to you to get started. Exactly. And it can definitely help with a coach like you to lead them along the way. A bit of guidance never hurt anybody, did it?
Exactly. We all need help.
Do I need help? I'm going to go to that coach that I need to speak to, who's going to help me skyrocket my success that I need to get on with. But I may wait till my holiday that happens in 2 weeks' time first and then do it. There's always a reason to procrastinate, isn't there? And to always. I can always contact him first before I go away and get him booked in. But I think we'll see what happens there. But Louise, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you.
If somebody wants to find out more about you, how do they do that?
Yeah, so I've got a website, so louiseblackmancoaching.com. You can find me on there. I'm on Instagram, Louise Blackman Coaching as well, TikTok as well. And yeah, all of my links are on there. You can get in touch with me via the website, or you can drop me a DM on Instagram. And yeah, I'd love to have a chat with anyone who sort of wants to explore self-worth or personal development a little bit further.
Fantastic. Well, I'll put those notes into the notes of the podcast. Someone will find you, click on you and find out more about you and follow you and find out about the great work that you do. Because it's much needed, particularly more than ever at the moment in the world. So we need to rebuild our power, don't we, as collectively? And we need to support each other, and we need to get on with this and just come back even stronger and reinvent and reboot ourselves. So thank you so much, Louise. Have a great rest of the day.
Thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you so much for listening. I'd love to give you a free copy of my latest book, which you can download right now from my website, jamespreece.com. If you enjoyed this podcast, I'd really appreciate it if you could share the love by taking a few seconds to write a positive review on the iTunes store right now. See you next time.